Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another episode of The Breakdown. It is February 22nd, 2023. I'm your host, Nate Pike. We're going to be joined in just a second by the incomparable Sarah Biggs to help us make sense of a few things. Tonight is going to be a little bit different. We're going to try to do things a little bit quicker than normal, perhaps. And we are also going to be running through a couple of... let's go with some of the conspiracy theories that are making the rounds in Alberta politics right now, because there are a few conspiracy theories that have been getting a lot of media attention that we want to try to see what we can do to make a little bit of sense out of tonight. We're also going to be answering questions. So with politicians hitting the doors, with their volunteer teams hitting the doors, there's a lot of people who are wondering, hey, if a politician shows up at my door, what kind of questions should I ask them? We're going to be having Sarah Biggs. She's going to hopefully provide us a little bit of context. I'll throw in my 2 cents for the exactly 2 cents that they're worth. But before we get too far into things, a couple things that we wanted to just quickly talk about. One of them, it's got to do with this furor that we're seeing from people about the concept of these 15-minute cities. There's a lot of people who have gotten really, really upset about the idea of 15-minute cities. But the thing is, nobody seems to really know what we're actually talking about. There's a lot of misconceptions. There's a lot of misinformation. There's a lot of disinformation. So we did a little bit of digging, and we wanted to try to make a little bit of sense of what these 15-minute cities actually are. So at the end of the day, what it comes down to is 15-minute cities. The idea behind it is that you should be able to walk to whatever amenities you need, whether it's a grocery store or whether it's a hardware store or a library or any of those things. You should be able to walk to those places in 15 minutes. They should be that close. That's how cities should be designed. Now, obviously, in a city like Calgary, we got some sprawl problems. So in a lot of these examples, you can't walk 15 minutes to a grocery store. But the basic idea is that if people had better access to the things that they need via walking, maybe they would drive less. Maybe that would ease up on some congestion. And it comes out of a situation that occurred in the UK. And so basically what it was is the city council put forward a proposal. I want to make sure that I get this right. They put forward a proposal to have effectively traffic filters. So what traffic filters are is areas where just driving through isn't allowed. If you just drive through these areas, then you'll get a ticket. That doesn't mean there's no access to those areas. From an article in the USA Today, where they actually debunked this whole thing, vehicles such as buses, taxis, motorcycles, emergency vehicles, as well as cyclists and pedestrians will still have free access to all of these roads. So it's not like they're closing down the streets and nobody can get in or out. And in fact, if you decide, not today, I'm really going to take this road, you can still do that. There's no physical barriers. There's just a camera, like a red light camera, that if you're driving on these roads inappropriately at the wrong time in these little areas, then you would potentially get a ticket. That's it. That's the whole ball game. So it's really quite inconceivable why it is anybody would be getting this upset over this idea of the 15-minute cities creating locked down areas, because that's simply not what is being talked about. What's being talked about is how do we address traffic congestion? How do we make sure that we're designing cities, designing neighborhoods so that people have access to the things that they need in order to cut down on driving? Walking places is good for you. Now, obviously, anybody who's in Calgary tonight, or really Alberta tonight, there's some days where that's just not going to be an option. But that's exactly why there are times when these rules would be lifted. In the UK, they don't usually get down to minus 35 all that often. So the whole furor over 15-minute cities is just something that's being misrepresented. It's almost as if there has become this little backyard industry that's been created around, well, we've got this conspiracy theory. If I get people really, really upset about it, they'll give me money. Now COVID's over. People can't get so upset and fund these grandiose speaking tours across the entire everything. So I guess we have to move on to the next thing. And that means that we have to manufacture the next thing. 15-minute cities. Oh, that sounds like we can probably get some grift out of that. Moving on from there, hopefully we got us to Sarah Biggs hanging out in the wings. I'm gonna turn her camera on just in case. And here we go. Sarah, how are you doing tonight? I think you're muted again.
Hi.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing good.
You took the words out of my mouth. The 15-minute cities are the new grift.
Well, I mean, that's really what it is, though, isn't it?
It's So I wrote a strategy for a campaign a little while ago. Actually a year ago. Oh my God. So we were doing an analysis of food desert.
Okay.
So anything that was like, so if you take a map of a town, I don't have maps. That's okay. So if you have maps and you draw 1.5 or 2 kilometer circles of, grocery store, there should be grocery stores in those circles. And what we noticed is that we had circles like this on the west end, like this. Then on the south side of the city, it was like this. So there was a huge food desert. So, I see 15-minute city as, let's go back to 1915 mentality. Every district had their butcher, their, bread maker. How do you call it? So, no, everybody had their butcher, their bakery. Yes, sorry, I can't speak English tonight. My toddler's been sick for the past 2 days and mommy has not slept a lot. Our vegetable markets, the pharmacy, everything you needed was in those neighborhoods. And back in the day, there was no cars. There was a local school, there was a local church, there was the doctor sometimes that had an office there, the lawyer. Like if you look at Inglewood slash Ramsey is the best example of how it was back in the day. People didn't have cars. People were walking to go to school. People were going to, walk, take the kids, go for a walk, grab the groceries, stop by the bakery, stop by the butcher to get a special, and then go home. And the way I see it is that with all the transportation issues and sprawl issues that we are dealing with right now, density is could be one of the great equalizers of the issues that we're having. Like today, I was driving on Acadia. The line was just so long just to get to the light, so I went around. But it shouldn't be that way. We shouldn't have to struggle to get around. And yeah, I see 15-minute cities as just like, it's not a concentration camp. It's not like what's in China. It's nothing like this. It's just there's a model in Vancouver some developers are working on. So at each corner, there's a store at the bottom. And then the second, third floor has, apartments, condos, whatever you want to name it. In my hometown, Switzerland, where my family's from, we still have, so my great grandparents were traders, DERS, not traders. So
The Swiss were neutral. They were a neutral folk.
Yeah. We're always neutral. But my uncle, so they kept the house, my family, my ancestors grew up in. The house is like 200 something years old, and we still have a clothing store on the main floor. Second, third floor is the family residence. So I think it's just an attempt to try to densify and try to stop the sprawl and really go back to basics. It wasn't that bad back in the day when you had, like, I lived in St. Alta and I loved how close everything was. I was like 3 minutes away from 17th Ave and the grocery store and everything. I could walk everywhere. It was not a problem. I was like 10 minutes away from co-op and it was great. I didn't have to jump in my car every single time I wanted to go somewhere. And that's the problem I'm facing right now because I live in the burbs. So to take the kids swimming or to take the kids to school or to go, we need to take our car. So I think, and it's all a matter of, trying to be mindful about our emissions and how we're dealing with the environment and less cars on the road and try to incentivize. It's also 15-minute cities are walkable cities. They're bikeable cities. Um, does anyone remembers a guidebook back in 2021?
Oh, I do.
Oh, do we ever? But the grist, when Chris Kai goes after something, that it's a good thing.
As a general rule.
It's
See,
15 minutes. Cities are the new grift.
my
Sorry.
whole thing is like, I grew up in a small town in northern Alberta, and it didn't take 15 minutes to walk from edge to edge of the town. And so it's one of those things where, like,
Yeah.
how badly have we lost the plot, first of all, that we're getting upset about? Oh, I could have everything I need within 15 minutes. It's unfair. Like, that in and of itself is mind-blowing to me. But the
Because
fact is,
everybody
they're not.
wants to flash their Land Rover on the street, Nate. That's why.
But they're not even limiting that. I mean, the where this all came out of in the UK, the idea is there's certain roads,
Yeah.
not all the roads, just certain roads.
Look at Banff. Main Street in the summer. Best example. I love it. The best stroller-friendly thing they could have done. Like, seriously. I have a stroller because my toddler is sometimes untamed, and sometimes the stroller is a lifesaver. And for every mom out there, Main Street in Banff during the summer and Main Street in Canmore during the summer, it's perfect because you just pop in and out, in and out. It's not a bad thing to not have vehicles. Look at the transformation Paris went through over the past 3-4 years.
I haven't been.
Well, okay, so okay, so to give some context, so you have like the Louvre, and then you go down the boulevard, and then you continue straight, you have the opera. And then you have a boulevard that goes across, and it's called Boulevard des Comédiens. And it used to be packed with cars, packed. Now it's a cyclist street. Cyclists took over Paris. So if Paris
it's hard to imagine France taking over anything, but
that
was a surrender joke.
I know. Allez les bleus. But no, people need to get over themselves. If they want to grift, they can grift. But holy gin, I'm just getting so frustrated that they're using this engine. Was like, oh, it's like concentration camps. No, you don't have anyone dying in Auschwitz, but you didn't. Like, I see some prominent Calgarians posting videos of what's going on in China. We're not in China. We're not living in the communist country. We're just trying to be smarter about our.
Well, here's my thing. When people are like, oh, well, if you look at what they're doing in pick dictatorial country X, they're locking people in. Okay, cool. You know what else they do there? When people call out the government, they get disappeared.
Mm-hmm.
So you haven't been disappeared, kiddo. You're doing okay.
They're just fine. Or, if you're a very influent personality and calling to watch the execution of a lot of world leaders on PPV, that I would like to see that gold medal being handed back real quick, because it's not okay. But on to the next grift, right? They got to keep themselves busy. COVID's, it's not over. It's far from over, but
we're acting like it's over.
What we are. We get more COVID, but more people are surviving it now because of vaccines. Vaccines work, people. Go figure. Oh my God, they work. Oh, I'm gonna get another email for registration for a Substack from a doctor again. I just feel it.
I was, you know what? I unsubscribed and then I got added back.
Oh yeah. Oh
And
yeah.
then I was told that my free trial was over and I would have to pay. And I was like, sweet, cancel that. And I haven't gotten anything recently, so that's kind of cool. But let's talk about this Jamie Saleh thing for a little bit, because
Yeah.
this is, I mean, here's the
It's
thing.
sad.
It is sad. And we've seen throughout the pandemic, there have been certain people who have been radicalized. And
Mhm.
we're seeing more and more, because there's a lack of willingness to accept expertise, I guess, that people are trying to manufacture their own. Well, this makes sense, and they're taking the information that they're getting from Facebook groups and certain far right media outlets. We'll get to them in just a sec. Who are happily spreading straight up hateful information. We talked about this last episode where there was the gentleman who wrote the column where he admitted, "Oh yeah, I totally leaned into the homophobic and the transphobic tropes for clicks." Ah! I mean, he apologized after, so good, I guess, but it speaks very clearly to the type of model it seems to speak very clearly to the type of model that's being utilized. And there doesn't seem to be any concern for the fact that when you throw that bullshit out there are people who will believe it.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And I look at Jamie Saleh and I go, you want a gold medal for figure skating. That's pretty good. You don't have to be an expert on immunology, virology, political science, sociology. Like, you know what? You did okay.
Google
Maybe
and a
just
notepad.
take that. Sell some Nikes. I don't know.
Just retire. But it's just so sad to see. Like at the beginning, Jamie was like wearing t-shirts, be like, let's beat COVID together. And then, like I always said, 3 years of pandemic and Facebook are not a good mix. They are not, because a lot of people were alone. A lot of people were going through separations. A lot of people were, it was family day since March 13, 2020. It's been extremely, it's like when I'm being asked, what do we do for a family day? It's like, it's been family day for 3 years. So, I'm done. You do what you want. It's a free day today. Yes, I'm a bad parent. You can come at me with your pitchfork. That's okay. But it's just sad to see how some individuals really, really, I wouldn't say, I would say the evolution of the race to the rock bottom. And there are some individuals taking advantage of some individuals with name recognition, and they are using those individuals to try to push their agenda. Or, like, I don't know, this summer, our premier had a very, when she was running for leader, she had a very prominent hockey player on her health panel, or I don't know what it was. I just shook my head and I walked away. But the thing is that certain individuals took advantage of certain individuals, and we are like, if you look at, where's Kevin J. Johnston these days? Do you know where he is?
Don't. If you say it 2 more times, he'll appear. It's like Beetlejuice. Don't do it.
So
there we go.
But no, we had a lot of actors, like, certain non-media, because they're just, pundits, or some new media came up to be able to pursue and push a new agenda. The social media context changed a lot. It was abrasive before, but it became even worse. Because now when you disagree with someone, you're a communist. Like, my husband always sends me that meme that says everybody I disagree with is a communist. it's quite funny because it's Lenin on a magic carpet ride, and it says everybody who I disagree with is a communist. But because you got to keep your sanity at some point. But it's just really, really unfortunate. And I think that, you know, in the new curriculum, if a new curriculum is being implemented, critical thinking and how to recognize misinformation should be mandatory in high school. I'm just going to leave it at
Junior high and elementary.
that. Oh,
There should be, and nobody should be afraid, especially the conspiracy theorists who are doing their own research. Nobody should be afraid of asking well-informed questions. And I mean, when you see someone like Jordan Peterson, I saw put out a tweet this week where he was like, anybody who's trying to label something misinformation or disinformation is they're probably just lying to you. And it's just like, that is the clumsy, woke. That is the clumsiest and worst kind of manipulation, to be like, hey, if it's misinformation, it's probably stuff they just don't want you to know. Well, yeah, I don't want people thinking that, I don't know, hydrochloric acid on an open wound will solve the problem. That is bad information. Somebody should be saying, don't do that. That's bad information. And if you have a problem with that, there's only one of two things that's going to happen. You're either going to find out through your own research, or you're going
to find out.
or Darwin's coming for you. Yeah, and I don't want to see Darwin take people.
No, you know, I want people to be happy. You know, if you don't want vaccines, see, I was talking to a family member in Edmonton last week, and he owns a business, and his warehouse, his manufacturing warehouse was full of orders. So he deals in technology and all that. During COVID, and when vaccines became mandatory, because he was dealing with some tradesmen, some of them were like, oh, no, I'm not getting the vaccine. And he was like, you're going to leave tonight, go get a little shot in your little arm, and you're going to come back tomorrow morning vaccinated with your little card. If not, you don't have a job anymore. It was like, I can't afford to shut down. I just can't. But some individuals are so deeply convinced that, you know.
You know what the good, there is a silver lining to the.
Is there?
There is, to the Jamie Soleil, Theo Fleury thing. So I saw the thing, the Jamie Soleil tweet where she was like, yeah, I would love to see all of these people get executed because I'm a caring, compassionate human being. Paraphrased a little bit there for the record. But I also saw, as I was scrolling through her little timeline, she was like, oh, coming up at the end of the month, it's the live show of Fire and Ice with Theo Fleury. And I was like, man, it's been a while since I looked into this, because I heard that they were doing a television talk show on a monthly basis. And I was kind of like, okay, well, whatever, whatever. But here's the good news, because I did a little bit of like rabbit holing, and it turns out they don't have a studio per se. They rent out a theater, and then they set up all their stuff and they record their show, and that's fine. No, I'm not judging anyone's production values or anything, but I looked at the costs of the theater. And you know how we've been kind of talking about how down the road, couple of months maybe, we need to try doing a live. It's affordable. So we may have found a possible venue for a live thing.
Olsen and Biggs will be sponsoring it.
There we go. So even better. But I want to move on from there, because talking about grifters. No, we're going to go back to the grifters. Because I want to hit one more topic before we get into the door knocking and the questions from the comments or anybody who's on Twitter Spaces. Because there is one other thing that I think that we need to address. There's been a lot of furor lately over the drag story time. And we've talked about this on the show before. And at the end of the day, the bottom line for me is, if parents are choosing to take their kids to drag story time, that's their choice as parents. And if you have a problem with that, then you need to check yourself, because you might just be an asshole. But
Hold
here's
on. So those are the same parents that are advocating for choice in education, right?
yeah, those same ones. As long as you make the same choices that we do, we totally believe in parental choice.
Yeah. Okay.
But here's where things have unfortunately and tragically escalated. And this is another one of those ones where I'm going to say least qualified person in the room to speak on this, but I feel like it's a conversation that we have to at least start having. And that has to do with the controversy around a City of Calgary change room where a trans individual was a trans woman was changing at the swim place.
So my kids went swimming with grandma a couple weeks ago, and they had to walk through that shit. And I'm going to call it that shit. My 2 years old, who's, she's pretty rad, she's pretty strong, she's pretty smart, but she shouldn't have to be. And my 10 years old should not be exposed to that kind of hate, that kind of bigotry, that kind of fucking Jesus guns and babies behavior, and forcing down something that's not even true. Like my mother-in-law told me about it after, and I was like, it's a good thing I was not there because I would have been in trouble.
So do you know the story?
I know the story because my kids had to walk through that shit.
So here's the evolution of how this thing came to be. And this is important because we're going to talk about the the Western Standard, because they're at the very center of this whole clickbaity bullshit
Always and
hate.
forever.
They're at the very middle of it, because here's what happened allegedly. And it's really important to emphasize
On
that
the allegedly.
the allegedly part, and the story that has been handed down telephone style is one where the people who spoke to the Western Standard allegedly didn't provide any sort of identifying information. So we have somebody who's willing to make apparently a bunch of statements and not stand behind the statements whatsoever. Do with that what you will. But the story came out from the Western Standard that a 9-year-old girl came out of the women's change room. She said, "Oh, I think that there's a man in there," and the dad then. So here's the first.
The dad.
This is what I'm saying. So if we're going to say there shouldn't be men in women's change rooms, I'm just going to go out on a limb here and say I think that carries over all the way. If you have a concern about that sort of thing, then it would be appropriate to raise it with the staff, who could then send in a female member to go investigate. But if you go charging in as the John Wayne masculine hero into the women's washroom, you're already getting it wrong.
But you know what's pissing me off? Those people, those individuals, the trans community, they just want to live their life. A lot of them are dealing with gender dysphoria. They're really struggling, and very often transition is the solution. I know someone back in Quebec, a very, very prominent public figure, very smart business person, tech person who transitioned. And she transitioned early, like I'm talking like 13, 14 years ago. Like she was one of the pioneers. So she transitioned from male to female. But here's the thing: they're saying they're groomers and they're pedophiles. No, no, no. Guess what, guys? They just want to be fucking left alone. I'm more worried about Jim Bob down the street with a criminal record living by a school that by, I don't know, Michelle, who's just, did her work. She just wants to live her goddamn life and want to live her truth. I'm tired of double standards. Just let people be. What happened to let people be? What happened to that?
Well, here's the question that I have fundamentally. There is a baked-in assumption that's being implied, and I think it's really dangerous, because the implication is that if a trans woman is in the woman's washroom, well, she must be a predator. And that's just not true. Being
It's
trans doesn't make you a sexual predator. Being gay doesn't make you a sexual predator.
There's more
Reading
Catholic
children's books as
priests
a
that
drag
are.
performer.
Here's the problem that I have. There's more religious men that are sexual predators than any member of that community. Fuck's sakes. Like, half the Catholic Church is being investigated right now. Sorry, I'm angry.
Here's the other thing that I don't understand. And this to me is like indicative of how little, and I say this as a middle-aged white guy, how little middle-aged white men know about women's washrooms. Because here's the thing. Y'all have stalls.
We do.
In a men's washroom, it's urinals. It's open season.
Oh
And
no,
so,
you guys usually have 2 stalls.
well, yeah, but those
For
those
number
are
2, right?
those are yeah, those are
Yeah.
that's a whole different thing.
I've
But
used them before because I did want to wait on a sign. Like sometimes when you go to a concert and it's like a boys band, I'm sorry. Or Taylor Swift, I'm sorry. I'm gonna be using the dude's washroom because I don't want to wait 45 minutes. And you know what? I don't care. I did it when I was 16. I did it when I was 19. I don't care. A bathroom is a bathroom. I share my bathroom with my husband. What is this? What is this? Sorry.
but it's this base assumption that anybody from any particular demographic is more inclined to be a sexual predator. You know who sexual predators are? Sexual predators. Period. That's
They're
it.
registered too.
That's the whole ball game. Being gay doesn't mean that you're going to be a sexual predator. Being a drag performer reading stories to children doesn't mean that you're going to be a sexual predator. Being trans doesn't mean that you're going to be a sexual predator. None of those things equal to being a sexual predator.
Yeah.
Period. And the notion that, like, again, it's just that we shouldn't have men in the women's washroom. So as a man, I'm going to go charging into the women's washroom and I'm going to fix the things in there. Like,
But here's the thing. He left his 9 years old go alone and didn't use the family washroom instead. I have questions.
I have a lot of questions.
Anyways, hi to Larry Heather, who showed up with his, his speaker and his microphone and started singing songs.
Oh Christ! I thought Larry Heather was in our comments for a section, and you gave me a heart attack.
No. He was there singing his little heart out.
Well, that's lovely.
Well, he's always on this corner of Southland and McLeod with his anti-abortion signs. He always gets a good hunk and a middle finger.
There we go. All right, let's move on from there. Because again, and this was one other thing I just want to mention before we move on. I spent like half an hour today trying to find out, okay, so what the hell exactly happened here?
Mm-hmm.
Like with this
I think it was out of Vancouver, that parent. It was from BC. It was not even.
No, it was from the Canyon Meadows.
It was from Canyon. And I read another story too, that it was like parents from BC that complained.
There were some in Saskatchewan. But at the end of the day, all of the sources for the story that came out of Calgary were based off of, some of them just directly copy pasting the Western Standard.
Mm-hmm.
So when CBC hasn't picked up on it, when Global hasn't picked up on it, when CTV hasn't picked up on it, when City TV hasn't picked up, when nobody else has picked up on this major story,
wake up.
It kind of smells a little bit like bullshit, as I'm saying. But let's talk about door knocking. We're heading into the election, presumably. We're certainly seeing no shortage of promises being made. I mean, you and I had a conversation about this. I think it was yesterday, where it's like, I don't even know what we're going to talk about on Wednesday, because it's just been a fire hose. We're basically going to release the budget early. Hope y'all are okay with that. So we're clearly in campaign season. One of the topics that's come up a couple of times in the chat has been, what do we say to a politician when they show up, when they're door knocking? Now, I've done the door knocking thing in not one but two elections, and I've volunteered for a couple other campaigns as well, so I'm not a stranger to door knocking. But from a political strategist standpoint, I want to hear your thoughts on what should people, knowing that we're going to be, especially if you live in Calgary, battleground city. There's going to be cannons and junk. What should people expect? What would you encourage people to be prepared with when it comes to questions?
Ask about, okay, so if you have a, I don't know, conservative candidate at the door, and don't forget, we need to remain nice. Right? Sometimes I give a little bit of a hard time to some people because I can, but you gotta remain nice and polite. So, first question, if you live in Calgary and you have a UCP candidate showing at your door, being like, hey, how is R Star not considered like corporate socialism? Are you okay with that? Are you supporting it? Because I'm not okay with that. It's my money. Number two, education. There's not enough space right now in the media and in the political debate for education. It has to be. We need to scrap the curriculum. There's a lot of issues with the curriculum and how it flows in causes so many problems. We don't have enough EAs. It's like post-secondary. Hey, we've made so much cuts for the past 2 years, but hey, we're gonna for the past 4 years, but hey, we're gonna be putting in the cap, so it's gonna help the students in 2024, 2025, I think, Nate. And then, university are gonna be getting even less money, so you're shit out of luck. Then I would ask about transition. Ask them hard questions. What are they going to do? How are they planning to address,
I
new
just want to be
technology?
crystal clear when we're talking about, given what we just finished talking about, when you're talking about transition, you're talking
Sorry,
about just transition,
just transition.
or they've got a new name for it. They rebranded it.
Yeah, sustainable jobs, Bill. Sorry, I didn't mean about individuals transitioning. But
You
you
should
could
tell
all,
them that that's that. Any politician who wants to talk about that, you should just tell them it's none of their goddamn business.
yeah, and just fuck off, Brenda. Just, go away. Sorry for anyone listening. It's named Brenda. That's just my line these
Hashtag
days.
not all Brendas.
Yeah, not all Brendas. It's not all Karens, right? Or Lindas. Anyways. Uh so you need to ask questions that do matter to you, that have consequences, issues that are in your neighborhood. A lot of people are on community um Facebook page. Like, I know what the issues are in my community. I'm not going to give the name, but I know what the issues are. It's like during a municipal election, everybody wants snow clearing, but no one's getting it done because nobody wants to pay more taxes, and then it's up for another whole discussion. But ask them, education. How will my kid meet the requirements when the rollout is so disastrous? Okay, so you said that you didn't want to throw more money on the healthcare system, but you just announced $2 billion. What's up with that? We're just genuinely trying to understand. There's an article that came out today that Daniel Smith doesn't even know how many people are waiting for a recovery bed.
But it's indisputable that Alberta is leading the way in addictions.
Ask my dead cousin how he feels about it. Sorry, that one's very, very personal for me. It's the night she got elected, my cousin passed. It's very, very personal. Like, we cannot force we we can't force individuals into recovery. We can support them. We can provide them, like, harm reduction is king here, guys. What are they going to do to, homelessness right now is a big problem. There is a journalist at a news outlet in the city taking pictures. For some reason, he loves writing articles about me without calling me or quoting me properly. But he was taking pictures, shameless pictures of individuals just really trying to warm up. Like, what a fucking shame. That's where you're at, bud? I'd be ashamed to be getting a paycheck from the shit he writes. It's just shameful. Like, the city's suffering. Are we going to give a better deal to cities so they can have more money to allocate to DOAP teams? Alpha House, they're opening 35 recovery beds at the DI, but the DI is short staff and it's not necessarily the safest place on earth right now. talk about local issues and hold your representatives, both sides, accountable, because both sides will want you to believe what they are trying to do, but you need to hold your feet to the fire. You have to. This election, we need to be extremely, extremely thorough on our politicians. But it's like, for me in my area, it's like, okay, how are you going to be protecting this park? What are you going to do about it? Or, I don't know. If I was rural, I would be like, hey, I'm planning on getting pregnant this year. Am I going to be able to give birth at the hospital? Is three streets, three
It's
corners
within
on
15 minutes of walking.
15. But, we need to go back to basics, guys. Forget about all the fluffy programs, and we have lost our ways. We have lost what good fiscal management was. We have lost, like, let's remember that some individuals chose to immigrate to Canada, and they chose Alberta within Canada because of their excellent educational program. Well, guess what? UConn dropped us and they took BC. So, that we need to be. The thing is that I do not, some some MLAs are really have the constituents, concerns at heart. They try to work for it. Elect someone is, forget the parties. Elect someone is going to work for you. That's what I would say. Do your homework, look at the candidates. Well, it's pretty much a two-party system right now, except in a few ridings, but do your homework and elect. Don't look at the color. Don't look at the color of the sign. Don't ask them the hard question of what they are going to do for you during hard times.
Well, one of the things that I think is worth highlighting when it comes to the door knocking and the questions, as somebody who has stood on the knocking side
Yeah,
of
I
more
did
than,
so much knocking.
yeah,
Yeah.
one of the things that has always really sort of resonated with me is when you get to a door and somebody's very clearly prepared. They've been waiting for this moment. And I remember there were a couple of houses that I went to where somebody had notes that they kept beside the door so that when some politician showed up, they could be like, all right, here's the list. And I think that that sort of thing for me was, oh, this is exciting. This is a person who's engaged. I'm going to have a fun conversation here. Those were always the doors that I stayed
So,
way too long at.
are,
But should
are you,
people have a list, do you think?
yeah, make your list, your priorities. Local local representation is best representation at this point, because rural is going to be different from urban. Northeast Calgary reality is different than Southeast Calgary. We need to elect local representatives. Elect someone that lives in your riding. Elect someone that knows your riding. Elect someone that is going to show up when you're struggling, where the premier is doing a boo-boo, and that will be listening. Funny enough, during the municipal campaign 2 years ago, somebody from a candidate's team called on my husband's phone. They were like, hey, we're calling from this campaign. Do you have a minute to talk? And he was like, no, but you might want to talk to my wife. So, but I would urge, and for me right now, it's not a matter of party, it's a matter of local representation. If you believe that your candidate does not represent your values, or there's too many red flags per se for you, look for another candidate. Because if not, we're never, never, never going to get out the conundrum we're in, ever. So vote for local representation. Vote for someone that can go to the bat if you need infrastructure. Not too far from my house, it's like Anderson and all that. And they're just redoing a whole chunk of it. And you know what? That's great. Municipal funds were, allotted, some financing from the government. We're getting some upgrades. Awesome. But if we don't have that local representation, we're not gonna. Who's gonna go fight for local schools? Very often, rural schools are the heart of the community. Are you going to ask your local representative to like go to the bat to get an upgrade, to get your school upgraded? Will you? Will the representative go and ask for a, primary care center um, network in your community because you don't want to have to drive 75 minutes? But and I think that if we take it this way, we could be surprised of the end result. I'm just going to say that.
Fair enough. One of the things that I'm kind of curious about with this alleged election, I'm getting so good at using that word,
Alleged.
is alleged. I like saying it alleged because it's
You're
more
so
Anglo.
French. That's how I used
I
to
thought it
read
was like
my.
super Anglophony.
But when I was a kid, I thought that every word that ended by ed, I had to pronounce the ed. Walked, patted, talked. When I was 9, living in Quebec and barely speaking English, I was like super eager beaver.
We're going to see very likely in some of the more engaged communities that have active community associations, we're going to see debates. And we didn't get to see a whole lot in the way of debates in the municipal campaign because that was at the height in many ways of another wave of COVID. So a lot of debates that happened were either just web-based, but people didn't get to be there.
Mm-hmm.
Should people be looking for debates with these candidates? I mean, one of the things that we saw in 2019 was the UCP was like, it's a real nice debate you're having there. We're not coming. Do you think if people, if the UCP start to see more and more
public pressure,
do you think maybe they'll show up for debates? Like if we start to see, I mean, as much as they are deeply alarming, the reality is Take Back Alberta has done a really good job of getting the UCP's attention because they're getting 300, 400, 500 people out to their events. If we start to see more and more people who are not ideologues,
normal.
Well, I was being careful. Who are attending things like debates and that sort of thing. Do you think that will shift the UCP in this election into actually sending their candidates to debates, or will they? Or do they have enough? I mean, like Lacombe Pinoca.
Oh,
that would be.
Yes.
I
No,
would
that would
pay
be
money to go to
wild.
that debate. I would pay real money to go. I would drive and pay real money to go to that debate because
I'll
I
drive
guarantee
you up there.
you.
I'll drive. I want to go. I really want to go. I'm gonna bring my popcorn, sit in second row in the back.
It's gonna be nuts.
In some swing ridings, yes, maybe, because very often swing ridings are not rural, more urban. People are more interested into political debate, political discourse, and everything in between. Some of them are paying more attention, and I'm not dunking on rural right now. I'm just saying, it's a different kind of voter base, white collar, very, very white collar in certain areas in the city. Why not? Yes, honestly think that if some candidates are not showing up at the debate, I think it could badly look on them and they're hiding. 100%. Yeah. Yeah. I think it could have consequences.
Here's a question for you. And this has come up in the chat. And one of the things that we said we were going to do was address questions that came up in the chat tonight. If anybody does have any questions about door knocking or anything like that, please.
Ask it's an AMA.
Yep. One of the questions that came up had to do with the interview that the Breakdown did a little while ago, as part of our. I think it ended up being a 4-part series on the problems of political parties and the whipping that happens. To answer the question for politics of disability and equity, the 3 people that we spoke to in particular were ex-Justice Minister, the Honorable. She kept the honorific, and I love that. Stephanie McLean, NDP MLA Robin Luff, and Derek Fildebrand. And what I thought was really interesting, as much as it's very clear, I I have a lot of contempt for the Western Standard these days. Um, it was actually Stephanie McLean, Robin Leff, both NDP. I'm not going to say which one, but one of them said, you should get Derek to come on.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a lot more. Uh, there used to be a lot more openness to conversation between deeply opposing viewpoints. But it was fascinating to see the reality that you have Stephanie McLean, Robin Leff, and Derek Fildebrand, and all of them were saying the whipping process is so complete that it is almost impossible for a NDP or UCP or Wild Rose or UCP, because who are we kidding these days, MLA step out of line without having to deal with massive, massive consequences.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So how do you approach? How would you suggest people approach that? Because one of the things that has come up in the comments a couple of times here already, not only on YouTube but also on the Twitter machine,
I'm
is
not reading the comments.
you're not allowed to read the comments. Um, how do we have that conversation with the prospective MLA about how are you going to be able to advocate for your communities, for community issues, while at the same time getting Indiana Jones something hard on a daily basis? That was a bullwhip joke.
So follow the events very often. So it's going to be spring. It's going to be nice. There's going to be like Victoria Day. Well, if the election's in May. Follow, maybe just maybe some unions will be organizing some events. Local NDP and UCP candidates will be putting in, events. So they will be, in the wild. Watch. Sometimes the good door knockers have like sandwich signs that says door knocking your neighborhood today. You know what? Try to find them. Go ask them the question. Don't wait for them to come to your door. Don't.
There you go.
Sometimes they just don't have a choice. Or if they're an elected MLA, well, during campaigning, you can't really go to the MLA office to talk about campaign issues. Nor you
You're
can
not
use
supposed
constituency email.
to.
You're not supposed to do that. But again, show up to the campaign office, man. Ask questions. Be the. Can I say be the Karen, and ask all the questions, and be there, and be like my tween who's asking why every 5 minutes and is being defined to me. Ask questions. Follow the events. Follow them where they're at. Show up to the forums. Very often you're going to be able to talk with them. And it's not all MLAs that are bad.
No.
Let's remember that. And I know I'm gonna get thrown some pitchforks and some fire, but there's some people are being elected under UCP banner that are decent people.
Most of
And
those people aren't running again, though. But
no, but I'm hoping that Christina Steed's gonna be elected. I think it's tomorrow. What date is it today?
22nd today.
Yeah, nomination votes tomorrow night. So hopefully, Take Back Alberta is going to be losing their grip. But just follow the events. During the election in my ward, there was a ward page where we could engage with the candidates. A Facebook page, set up a Facebook page, and if they ignore you, you know what? Keep the pressure on. You're not going to get anything done if you don't keep the pressure on. That's my motto. You keep the pressure on. Doesn't matter which side of the aisle. Keep the pressure on. Keep asking questions. And if you're not happy with the answer, persevere and ask. I'm not saying harass candidates. That's not what I'm saying.
No, don't
I'm
do that.
saying
Don't do
no, don't do that. They're humans too. And they have feelings, but show up to local debates, show up to the events, show up to local discussions about your writing. You need to do all those things. We need to be. Oh, we lost Nate.
I don't know what's going on with my laptop tonight. I'm still here. I may
That's
just
fine.
have to switch to the
So
crappy desktop.
It's okay. So yeah. So be present. Ask questions. Hold their feet to the fire on both sides, please. Because it's not that one's for one party or the other that they get a free pass. Just saying.
Don't disagree. It's the Plan B camera now. I had another question that I wanted to ask you, but it totally fell out of my head when my camera shut down.
Any questions in the chat?
Well, that's one of the things that I wanted to say. If there's anybody who has any questions in the chat or in the Twitter Spaces, throw them in the comments, or do the little. There's actually people in Twitter Spaces tonight. I've been kind of wondering, like I've been a little worried about the Twitter Spaces, how it's been doing, but
it's fine.
Yeah, seems to be doing okay.
I'm a little tired because we took possession of our office and I'm painting.
Paint fumes are brutal.
Especially when you're 5'2".
There is also that. I wouldn't know about being 5'2", but fair enough.
Sure.
Okay, so here's one thing that I want to throw out to our listeners, whether you're live tonight or whether you're listening to the podcast version or watching this down the road. One of the things that's going to be being navigated over the next little while is the schedule for the shows is going to get a little squirrely. And one of the things that we want to try to do is get back to some of the interview episodes that we've done to make it a little bit more consistent. So the stuff that's driving the squirreliness in the background doesn't really affect what people expect from the show. So all of that being said, if there are people that you would like to see us have conversations with, drop us a DM.
I love asking hard questions and have a good debate. I'd like to participate in a few.
There we go. We have a question on the Twitter machine. Sammy asks, why is Alberta? I'm going to take the first crack at that one just for fun. Alberta is Alberta because colonizers with guns and liquor said so.
And smallpox blankets.
I mean, it is what it is.
It's our history.
It is. And I got to say, that was one thing that I was really impressed with. There were a lot of people came unglued over this whole singing of the national anthem in the United States, no less. So, like, everybody slow down a little bit. But I don't have a problem with that lady singing "Our Home on Native Land."
No, that was awesome.
I thought that was just like awesome.
I saw it and I was like, oh.
Okay, so we got some questions in the chat that I want to run through. So first question that we have right here is Tamara. I always get Tamara and Tamara and all the variations of that wrong, so I hope it's Tamara. If I'm getting it wrong, I apologize. With so many free passes giving to lies and outright illegal things happening in government levels, when does the law kick in? I mean, what we've seen, I think, historically, is it takes a really long time. I mean, there's a lot of people who are super frustrated with the Jason Kenney investigation because it's taken so long for that investigation to go. But one of the things that I've been saying since that whole thing started up is if the reports of how complicated that actually was.
It is very complicated.
Yeah, how many people were actually involved are anywhere near accurate, then we're talking about an organization, an investigation, that's of the same scale of organized crime investigations. You think about how long it took investigators to take down Capone. You take a look at how long it took investigators to take down a lot of the organized crime rings in New York City. These are massive investigations with literally hundreds, if not thousands, of interviews and re-interviews. It takes a really, really long time. And unfortunately, when we have a government that is, I don't know, doing perfunctory, performative investigations of emails, that only makes things even harder.
Yeah.
But I do believe that in the vast majority of cases where people have egregiously broken the law, the consequences do eventually show up. Takes a while, but the consequences do eventually show up. With looking at the Mr. Kenney's illegal alleged illegal leadership campaign. Almost tripped on that one. Um, Looking at that, that's a situation where I think that there's a very strong argument to be made. When that investigation's done, we're going to see some things. So that would be my answer. Sarah, what do you think? What is it? Why are free passes given to lies? I mean, lies aren't illegal. That's part of the
No.
problem. Is people can lie. We see that all the time where politicians lie or
The thing
political
is
actors.
that we kind of, I feel like there's been more space for being complacent. There's more space for being tolerant. No matter what happens, we're like, yeah, maybe they messed up, or maybe this, maybe that, or individuals are just exhausted. So when does the law kick in? Is a very, very, very complicated question. Because, when you're saying, oh, well, my dog gave birth to 25 puppies last weekend, and, people on CERB eat Cheetos. There's no consequences to that.
Yeah,
Because
I
the
got the biggest
whips,
fish.
that's the thing, the whips don't want to bother about that kind of, the whips are busy enough trying to keep everybody in tow. And, they're not going to worry about that stuff. So, when does the law kick in? When they will decide, or when we will see fit, or when there's going to be enough public pressure. Because believe it or not, there's not enough public pressure to finish those investigations or to try to clear everything that's been happening. There's not enough. Even because the public outrage lasts 2, 3, 4 days, maybe a week, maybe 2, and that's it. Then dies and just dies.
There we
So
go.
someone, someone needs to stop looking. How would I say that? So someone needs to. So somebody that watches our show just texted me, and it says that, people need to stop looking for someone to save them from their responsibility to participate in democracy.
Decisions are made by those that show up.
It is made by those who show up.
Next question. Has
Yeah.
Jesperson asked you to join his show? Sarah Biggs has been on the Jesperson show.
Yeah.
I've never received
Or
an invite.
Buzz.
I think it's probably because, as has been established in the past, I think he would be intimidated by my Jesperson impersonation. I'm just saying that these sorts of things.
Oh my god! Keep telling yourself that. No, I've
Hey,
been.
you were the one who said I sounded like him. So
I don't know.
don't blame me.
No, I don't know who the question was for, but I go once in a while.
Yeah, Sarah's a big deal.
No,
no, you're a big deal. Deal with it.
No. Look at my hair. Like I'm just like.
Why do you think I wear a hat?
Yeah, but you're not gonna like. I'm gonna be judged by the hat that I'm wearing. So it might be matching my car.
There you go. Another one here. How is it the UCP can put out political ads without blatant and over-the-top lies? Do we have no laws against that? No. There are no laws against, to the best of my knowledge, there are no laws against
misinformation, lies. But at the end of the day, you can say whatever you want. You just need to accept the consequences. That's called freedom of speech.
There we go. So the argument would be, and certainly the argument that gets forwarded quite a bit, is if somebody lies on a political ad,
hold their feet to fire.
Exactly.
Wait, and that's the thing. And freedom of speech goes to both sides, right? There is a responsibility for everything. Like I stand by everything that I say every day. That's why I got a liability insurance. But the thing is that there's no laws, and it would not be in the country's or the province's best interest to. That's why C21 is muddy right now, for so many reasons, on both sides of the aisle. Some liberals like Margaret. Oh my God.
Thatcher?
No, not the dead one. The one that wrote. Oh my God, my brain's not functioning.
Doesn't matter. Liberal MP.
No. The writer that wrote Gilead.
Oh, Atwood.
Atwood, thank you. Sorry, I'm very tired.
I thought you were talking
Towers.
about an MP, and I was all
No, no,
confused.
no, no. But even individuals are fairly liberal, like Margaret Atwood, are like, ooh, C21 maybe not a good idea. It's.
I don't get it.
But I think that there would be a lot of very very dangerous precedents, and at the end of the day, we've seen what happened. We've seen a lot of fuck around find out for the past 3 years. You're free to speak as much as your little heart desires, but there's consequences sometimes, and hate speech is one of them.
And I
When
think
you're getting
part of
checked.
I think
But we
part of
can't. Everybody's gonna lies. Everybody lies. That's the thing. Everybody lies.
I think part of the problem though is that we have seen there used to be an expectation that political actors, politicians would at the very least err towards a more accurate version of things or a more accurate factual based interpretation of their things. But what we've seen, especially with Danielle Smith, because I'm going to say it again, Danielle Smith lies all the time. Um, there are politicians who have figured out that if I lie to people, there will be some people that go, I think that might be bullshit. And there are some other people who will go, you're saying exactly what I want to hear. It's not my fault after all. And I think that that's a big part of why they feel like they're able to get away with it. But at the end of the day, the only thing that's going to stop them from there's really only two mechanisms. The first one is if somebody says something about someone that's not true, then you're getting into the libel and defamation territory.
Yep.
And that's a whole other conversation. But
It's very
it,
expensive to insure.
yeah, if for Danielle Smith to say,
Vote.
oh,
Vote.
the anti-vax were the most
Yeah,
discriminated against people in history, that's not true. That's
but
demonstrably not true. But she can get away with it,
but it was a case of FAFO though, because everybody dunked on her after that, right?
except
She
for her base. Take
Yeah,
back
but her
Alberta
base
loves
gonna
it.
be her base. But it's like the NDP base gonna be the NDP base, right? For certain individuals, your party will do no wrong on both sides. So that is called hyper partisanship. And I'm sorry if I'm hurting feelings, right? But that's what it is. When you are dealing with hyper partisans, like Trump said, you remember what Trump said in 2016 campaign? I could go on Fifth Avenue and shoot someone on the street and I would not get arrested.
Yep.
How many Republicans were okay with that?
There were a lot of Republicans that figured out very quickly that their biggest priority was not their ethics or their integrity. It was about being on the winning team, and
Yeah.
that's part of the problem. I want to address a comment that's in the comments here real quick because I think that it is important. Um, uh, Tammy Morrison here says the UCP block people who push back.
Yeah.
Okay, that's okay because here's the thing: you're not going to be able to convince them. You're not going to be able to change their minds.
Yeah.
Those aren't the people that you need to be talking to or trying to talk to.
Talk to your neighbors, go door knocking, it's free.
This is what I'm saying.
Involve yourself on the political level. If you have a union, get engaged with your union. If you are part of a professional association, everybody's going on campaign mode right now. Every single union in the province is going to be talking about their own very specific issue during this campaign. Get involved. Door knocking costs this much.
It's true.
And it is, I still believe that it is one of the most powerful tools, especially after COVID. Well, after
Oh,
COVID.
and the science backs it up. Like the science on the statistics on what are the most powerful tools that can be used during a political campaign, and overwhelmingly door knocking is like the biggest because that gets people engaged. That gets people having conversations. It's so important. So not only is it important to sort of go back to where we started from, not only is it important to make sure that you're prepared when the politician du jour shows up, and hi, my name's Timmy. What would you like to know about my platform? And making sure that you've got questions prepared and you know what you want to talk about. But the inverse is also true. You can go out and you can say, hey, I like team Waffle House. I'm going to go door knock for team Waffle House. And
Uh-uh. International House of Pancakes, man.
see, now we're back to the two-party system. But um, that is something, and I can tell you as somebody, and I'm sure you'll agree with me, Sarah, um, that's one of the hardest thing to find volunteers for. And it's the biggest thing that makes a difference in political campaigns.
Okay, so here's one confession I need to make. When one of the hardest positions in during a political campaign is being the volunteer coordinator. And trust me, I try not to be because I'm not good
That
at
job
it.
sucks. That
It
job sucks.
sucks. It's horrible. I love my people, but it sucks. Because no, I'm gonna sound like a jerk. I'm gonna stop talking, but I would
Here's the
rather
thing.
go
If,
fundraise.
if you want to be a big help to a political campaign, volunteer to be their volunteer coordinator.
Coordinator. Because seriously, it's a nightmare. It's a logistical nightmare. You got to coordinate everything. You got to coordinate between campaigns. If you're not happy with what the other campaign's doing, you're trying to do your thing on your own, then you get yelled at and F that. No, no, no. That's why I manage and that's why I write strategy. I don't. Volunteer coordinators are saints.
True, though.
And it is a paid position usually. So, just saying. Because there are paid positions on a political campaign.
Oh, for sure there are.
Mm-hmm. Anything else?
I mean, anything else you want to tell people about the door knocking, getting involved, conversation?
Nothing's going to change in this province if we are just going to vote. I'm expecting a lot of people are going to be holding up their nose and stay home this election cycle. Go vote. I don't want to see a participation rate of 45 to 50%. I would love to see 70 to 75 because that election. So here's the thing. That election is going to be extremely consequential of the future of this province, and we're going to see if we're effed or if we are going to be okay.
I don't disagree.
Participate. Go for a walk. It's good for your heart. But my biggest rookie mistake is that, at some point back in the day when I moved in Calgary, I was working in a Holt Renfrew, and I had very, very fancy shoes off at 50%. And I bought a beautiful pair of Prada shoes with, a nice bow on it. And I went door knocking with those. No, they were flats, but my feet still remembered the pain.
Yeah. You talk to anybody who's done any kind of door knocking for any time, comfortable shoes, yo. It's all about get yourself a nice pair of
runners. Or if you don't like door knocking, you know what you can do? Get some tunes or podcasts in your ears. Get a lit drop shift. Just lit drop in your neighborhood. There are so many things you can do. Help with the texting because the parties will be getting voters lists. Get on with the texting or data entry and just help the campaigns. Because during campaigns, we work 85 hours a week and we are exhausted. And, the more the merrier. Being in a very, very busy campaign office is the best feeling ever. Just saying. And you make new friendships and you meet, it's your team. You did it all together. There's no, I always had a very, very big problem with like the campaign managers and the strategists being the star of the show. Let the team be the star of the show. Let your candidate be with you. Stand next to your candidate and be like, you know what? No, I am accepting my convictions. This is the candidate, and show your face. Show your face.
There you go. All right. Sunday. We'll be back on Sunday. It's not a long weekend, so that should. It should be a fun little show. I just want to reiterate again before I do the room clearing. Anybody who has if there's somebody that you want us to try to talk to, if you want to see a conversation happen
Yes.
between the breakdown and I don't know whoever, send us a DM, do the little at thinger, and let us know. It
I'll
never ceases
send a
to
phone
amaze
call.
me. Yeah, it never ceases to amaze me how some of the guests that we've had on the show where I've been like, somebody's like, hey, you should talk to so and so. And I've been like, okay, let's see what happens. And then sure enough, that person,
Yeah.
to my shock, says yes. So, especially with
Yeah,
an election coming.
if you have more questions and individuals who are a little intimidated asking questions, my DMs are not open, but if you follow me, you can DM me because it clears the noise out and I can block people more easily. But reach out if you have questions, if you want to hear someone, reach out. We're not going to bite. We're not, we're not mean. We're
Sure.
not mean. And then how many days? So should I do a show from Mexico?
I don't know. I don't know if I want to see like beautiful weather, sunny beaches when it's -30. I don't know if I want to do that, but
Maybe I can do the Wednesday one, stop by for 20, 25 minutes.
sure.
Because if not, I'm going to be away for like 3 episodes. And I don't know if I can stay away that long.
Fair enough.
Why do I keep saying Brian's name popping up in the chat? Sorry, last thing.
Because Lynn is Lynn's used to comment quite regularly on the Twitter Spaces, and she has Brian Jean as an MLA. And
Right. Okay, so just here, I got a question for you. Ask him if the article from September 26, 2022, saying that Daniel Smith, his statement was saying that Daniel Smith would commit irreparable damage to the province and to the party if she was going to be elected. Ask him if he still thinks that, if he was willing to sign on the. Don't tell him I sent you though. But I would ask that if a statement from.
Sounds like you just said that on a live stream on the internet.
Don't tell him I said that. I'm saying people are like, no, don't. I'm gonna be working from there, guys. So there's no.
You're reading the comments, Sarah Biggs.
Well, I open the comments now because it's bedtime.
There's one question. I'm gonna address this politics of disability and equity. We actually did.
I gotta sneeze. I'll be right back.
Okay, we actually did interview Rachel Notley about a year and a half ago, and would absolutely love to have that conversation again. I would love to have a chat with her again. Perhaps we'll reach out, but there's a few folks over in NDP land who are a little they're not big fans because of the Stephanie McLean, Robin Love thing that we did. But you know what? I'll send an email this week and I'll see if maybe Rachel Notley would be willing to come on the show again. There's a very short list of people that we wouldn't have on the show. She's not on that list, so would absolutely love to have her on again, and we can try to pursue that. All of that being said, it's getting close to my bedtime here, so I'm going to wrap it up. Want to say a big thank you to everybody in the comments tonight. Absolutely love the interaction. That's one of the things that makes this so much fun. Big thank you to everybody who's listening as well on the Twitter Spaces, regardless of what platform you're taking the show in. If you're listening to the podcast version, thank you for taking the time to hang out with us for a little bit. As always, if you appreciate the kind of content that we're trying to produce here at The Breakdown, you can always sign up to be one of our Patreon supporters at www.patreon.com/thebreakdownab, where for just the price of a fancy cup of coffee a month, you can help us to continue to try to produce the kind of content that we do and hopefully address some of these ongoing technical issues that just every time I think we get them solved, they come back and I don't know why. So yeah, you can do that at www.patreon.com/thebreakdownab. One of the other things that I promised myself I would plug is we've got a Substack now too, because there were quite a few people who were saying, hey, you know what? Love the live show, but I'd love to have something that I can refer back to. I'd love to see some of the links and stuff. So if you go to our Twitter, you can check out the Substack that we're running there. We're trying to publish that once a week to kind of fill in all the blanks. and that's not paywalled either because we don't do that. So you can take that in as well. In the meantime, we're going to be back on Sunday. Everybody, please have a great week. Try to stay, quite literally safe. It's friggin' cold out there in Alberta right now. And take care of yourselves. And as always, keep the conversation going.